Hello, Paul Valencia here from Clark County Today. It's the Clark County Today Sports Podcast with your hosts, me and Tony Liberatore. And I said it right. And I was going to,
Thank you,
I
Paul.
almost messed it up again. No. Just because now I've got, before I pressed record, we were talking about names and I almost messed it up. Anyway, and Cale Piland. Cale's from Evergreen Public Schools. Tony's from Vancouver Public Schools. And I'm just from Vancouver. I just live here. So, hey, happy summer for you guys. It's
getting close.
Getting close.
The snow days messed us up. Let's be honest.
I know Evergreen Public Schools has 2 more days of school.
Friday's the last day. Yeah.
And what about Vancouver?
We have 3 more.
You had to come back.
We come back Tuesday. That's what I say. When I say the snow day messed us up, it really messed us up.
So,
I'm sure there will be lots of students in attendance on Tuesday.
Right? Can you imagine?
You have a 3-day weekend.
And then we come back for the last day of school.
You come back for Tuesday.
Yes.
Oh, man. That's some planning. Hey.
Please, no yelling.
Okay.
Hey.
I'm going to get myself in trouble if I say things about school boards right now, but we'll wait for that some other time. Hey, today we're going to talk about athletic budgets at the high school level, and I got to, we'll get into that a little bit more. The big news for high school sports in the last couple of weeks: state football going to Husky Stadium on a trial basis. They say. I guess everything's a trial basis.
Yeah. It works until it doesn't.
It works, yeah, exactly. And then we're going to talk about Hall of Fame trips. Yours truly went to the Pro Football Hall of Fame this weekend. It was something I've been trying to do for years, and I finally got to do it. And Tony's been to the Baseball Hall of Fame several times.
3, yep.
And then Cale is in a Hall of Fame. That's what it's.
Hey, I've never been to one, but I'm in one. Yes,
exactly. So,
perfect.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure his Hall of Fame is probably more famous than the baseball and college.
Oh yes, I'm sure that's true.
Right. So, but anyway, athletic budgets. We got an email from. One of our listeners. We always say we have at least 3 or 4 listeners, and Randy just asked. I want to just talk about athletic department budgets at high schools. Mm-hmm. What pays for what? And I've got to say, as kind of leading up to our experts here, our experts can't get too specific, especially about their own school district. So we'll be talking in generalities. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And I think just to add on to that is that even within the school district, each school and principal can divvy it up a little bit different ways.
Wow. So 4 high schools for Vancouver schools for sports, for example.
4 comprehensive high schools. And so again, it depends on, if we want to go like War and Peace style or Cliff Note style on some of those things. So,
So same thing, Cale, at Evergreen schools? Is it similar to that?
Yeah, there is some level of consistency, mm-hmm. But then anytime you're dealing with a building budget, different principals will look at that. We'll look at that differently, and also. When you're looking at ASB budgets, because that's student money and it has to be approved, and those expenditures have to be approved by your student government, there's going to be some differences there as well.
Yep.
Gotcha. Now, Randy is his name. And hello, Randy. So Randy and I actually met in person. He just came up to me, saw my Raider gear, figured it has to be me.
Wait a minute. What if it was me?
Yeah, that's true. So,
I have a Raiders hat.
But then, he's just talking about, like the expenses. Football is more expensive than everything else, but it's got to be more expensive than soccer. And I was mentioning, but football also pays for everything else, mm-hmm. because there's a lot more fans that pay to get to watch football than, say, soccer or any other sports, things like that. But then Randy also wrote this email, and he just wanted to know how are they paid for, and I guess that's the first thing. We'll go, Tony. How what pays for high school sports?
Okay, again, we'll just for the brevity. So there is students purchase ASB cards, mm-hmm. and there's fees associated with that, and also when you turn out for a sport. And then there is also admissions into games, gate receipts, things mm-hmm. like that can help your school's ASB funds. Not so much anymore, but vending machines at the school. Mm-hmm. It's usually earmarked for ASB funds. But that could be like 5 shows.
Yeah.
So another
what's happened with that.
Yes.
But I mean, that's just kind of in general. And then I mentioned different. So my specific example is when I was athletic director at Columbia River, my boss and I worked out to where he gave me some, what are Cale mentioned them, labeled as building funds that I could use for athletics, and then I earmarked those for uniform cycles.
Got it. Okay.
So.
And Cale, and then also there are some levy dollars too, right? Yeah.
There's
Cale. Yeah.
So there are two funding methods or models within schools, and one, as we've talked about, are the ASB funds, and as Tony mentioned, that's going to come from gates at events, your student store, anything that's sold along those ways, ASB card purchases. Vancouver does have a participation fee.
Yep.
We do not in Evergreen. But then there's also a general fund budget, the building budget.
Yeah,
those dollars are where your levy dollars are committed to the school athletic budgets.
Got it. And I know some people ask things like, should we be doing that when we need we need more books, we need more this for. What is it called? Math and reading and all that stuff. The stuff that schools are made for. And I'm not saying Randy is asking those questions.
No. I think that's a good question.
In fact, Randy is. I think
he's a loyal listener.
He's a listener and he's a sports fan. So I know Randy's not saying that.
So and again, without getting too deep in the weeds, the way Washington funds schools, those funds like ASB would not go into like paying for teachers. It wouldn't go in for curriculum materials. Mm-hmm. And I know, Randy would understand this. A lot of our listeners would understand this. ASB funds are restricted funds, meaning they're public funds. And Cale mentioned they have to be voted on by the student government. Mm-hmm. And so there is a process, there's kind of a standard process. I'm sure each student government does it a little bit different, but then it goes to the school's business office, then to the principal and things like that. So we couldn't. It's just the state wouldn't want those funds used like that. And then when we're talking about athletics, because they are restricted, and I know, again, this could be another show, but that's where boosters come in. Mm-hmm. Boosters can help alleviate some of the coaches' issues with ASB funds. And I'll just give you an example, right, is that with ASB funds, you're allowed to give – so we just had graduation. Some of the cords or stoles that kids wear, we let them keep those. And that's allowed under, even though the school paid for them, that's like a nominal gift, essentially. That's okay. But if a coach continued to buy like, hey, I'm going to buy my whole team practice gear and shoes, see, that's a gift of public funds. We can't use ASB funds for that type of stuff.
Got it.
If the kids are going to keep it. Mm-hmm. If not, then we got to go through a checkout process and do all that.
Yeah. Tony's right. We probably could do an entire show on booster clubs and how booster clubs function and the pros and cons and whatnot. But they're very important to supplementing athletic budgets because we don't have an infinite amount of money to put towards our athletic programs, and so it's important that those groups do function. And as Tony mentioned, there's more flexibility with funds that come from a booster club because those aren't ASB funds, so those can be spent a little bit differently. But one thing that the school has to make sure that it does is monitor what booster clubs are purchasing, because you will get yourself into a Title IX pickle. Yeah. For those who don't know, that's basically Title IX's multifaceted, but one of the areas of Title IX speaks to equality for boys and girls, specifically in regards to athletics. So what you couldn't have is a situation where if you have a super healthy and active boys basketball booster club, and they want to go out and purchased 5 sets of uniforms for the boys team, and the girls aren't as boosters for whatever reason aren't as active, and they're only going to have 2. That's a Title IX violation. So if the boys have 5, even if the girls don't want 5, and they don't have the funds within their booster club to purchase 5, the school would then be on the hook, or ultimately the district, for making sure that we have equality in that realm.
So as soon, and I think Cale described that right, as soon as the school entity, so the team, coach, athletic director, accepts booster funds, they become subject to the public.
Right.
And so it's not only boys and girls, though. Here's where I learned the hard way. It's program to program.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just like, okay, so boys soccer, girls soccer needs this. It is. And so the best practice, and I don't know how Evergreen does it or what Cale's boss essentially says, because there's, Title IX directors or an officer. Actually, you might be.
I am the compliant.
You're the compliant officer. Mm-hmm. But it's not to have with 21 sports, 21 booster clubs. Mm-hmm. That would it becomes, there are schools that like that, but I did not want to go that route.
I remember years and years ago it might be a school district that's represented here, but they, like baseball teams had their scoreboards, and they wanted to put them up because their boosters or whatever gave them, or somebody figured out getting them scoreboards. But the softball teams did not. So the scoreboards did not get put up until the softball teams also got scoreboards. And I get that, but my point is that I'm not saying that I'm against Title IX. I am certainly not against Title IX. And no one there is, I don't think, especially for what it's done for women's sports. But it does create another obstacle in funding of sports. If somebody wants, I want to give the baseball team this, I want to give the softball team this. Well, you can't give the softball team this unless you give the tennis team that, or
well,
something.
And there is that aspect of it, Paul, and I agree with that. And I remember that scoreboard conflict, I guess, is that what you'd call it? Right. But and again, we're kind of going down a different route here. But what I think is important is Title IX, a lot of time in, the media and the way it's played out, even just kind of how people understand it. What it's supposed to do is to increase. Everybody should get a bigger piece of the pie, right? That's essentially what it's saying.
Increase participation,
increase participation, right? And I'll give you an example in our state, because of, and I don't. But let's be honest. Football skews all the numbers. Mm-hmm. It just does. And they just count. It's just a straight count. It's not team. It's like how many boys participated. Well, you could have on some 4A teams in this county 130 to 140 boys, maybe more. And there's just no girl equivalent.
Yes.
Correct.
There isn't. Mm-hmm. So, but my point is what happened, especially in the mid-90s, and this is my opinion, let me rehash that when Title IX started to become strictly enforced, 20 plus years in, especially university administrators, they said, we're just going to cut sports. And it's because of Title IX. Mm-hmm. And that was not the intent.
No.
And it was so instead of looking for ways to increase the participation numbers, and it does cost money to participate. I totally get that. They just said, we're going to cut. And the big one in the Northwest was collegiate wrestling, right? And you'll talk to old guy and the old time wrestling guys, and it's, hey, we lost wrestling around here because of Title IX.
Right.
And I said, no, the university administrators didn't want to do their due diligence and look at ways to increase participation for their student athletes. And because that's what we're, as high school athletic directors, that's what we're asked to do. Mm-hmm. That's how, and Cale would have more.
No, and you will get periodically audited by OSPI, and so we have to collect data every year, and we show within those audits what we have done to try to balance those numbers. And so, like in Evergreen, we run a girls lacrosse program.
Yep.
We run 4 levels of play with our volleyball team. We offer girls bowling. And there's those types of things that we have to do those things to balance those numbers, because as Tony did say, there is not a female equivalent sport to football numbers.
Right.
It just now, and it used to be, and wrestling used to also be a problem, but girls wrestling has started to grow, and so that's helped.
And bowling.
That situation, yeah.
In our state, in our county, for sure, bowling has helped.
Absolutely.
The numbers.
Yep. And so, Randy, if you're listening, see what you've done. We've gotten off a little off topic, which is what we predicted would happen.
Yeah,
it's really hard to explain.
It is. There's just so many variables in there, and the one that we haven't even touched yet. And again, we could probably do a whole show on this. Is House Bill 1660.
Yep, I even wrote that down. Yep.
So what House Bill 1660 did, and again, this is, at times we have people within state legislature who make and create policies who don't, on the surface, this seems like of course we would want this, but they don't work in the schools. It's kind of like, Paul, I read the newspaper. Right. I know when I read a good article and an article that isn't done that well, but I certainly wouldn't think that I should step into a newsroom and run the newsroom. I don't understand that part of it. Well, so this is a situation where folks made decisions within the state legislature that impacted schools. And what House Bill 1660 says is basically any student who qualifies for free and reduced lunch, they are not to pay any fees to participate in athletics. So in our district, that's just ASB because we don't have a participation fee. But in Vancouver, it would be both of those fees. And so what that does is typically your schools that have are in attendance areas that may be a little lower socioeconomically, they're going to have higher free and reduced rates. So in turn, what that does then is it provides the school with fewer funds to run their athletic programs because you're not having those kids pay to participate.
Unintended consequences.
Yes.
But go back to what Cale, and that's right. I mean, it has dwindled my current school's reserves. Mm-hmm. It just has, right? And the intent of the law is good, but what the legislature needed to do is work with the districts and say, hey, we're going to do this to alleviate some participation factors, which are real, right? Yep. But we're also going to then increase some funding for you.
Yes.
Right.
Now, I know, in Calewood, again, in Evergreen, didn't your district then supplement each high school's ASB?
Well, not the ASB, but their general fund budget, right. And we have been able to apply for a grant the last 2 years when this has been in place, that we have been able to get some additional funding. It still doesn't balance everything. No. Right. But the other piece of House Bill 1660, which this part is even more difficult for me to wrap my mind around. So those families, so a student is at Evergreen High School, they're on the girls' basketball team, and they qualify for free and reduced lunch. So that student does not pay an ASB fee to participate. In addition, Evergreen High School cannot. We have to let their families into events mm-hmm. for free. So they don't. That's part of it. So they don't. So they're not collecting gate, but it's only at events that are hosted at Evergreen High School. So when Evergreen's girls program goes to Camas to play, they have to pay at Camas to watch.
So Camas gets the gate.
Yes.
But
and this is what.
Oh my God.
This is what. So, no. But you can look it up. Anybody look it up. It is the heart. The heart work is there. I get what they're trying to do. And it's not that. It's just that, okay, legislature, if you're going to do that, let's look at the consequences of how that trickles down to the school. I have no problem alleviating participation factors around socioeconomic conditions, because that is real, like I just said. But
you're actually hurting the
yes, it's unintended consequence, because you don't look at how that budget is run, and you made this decision, and now it impacts schools that have higher free and reduced rates.
In your example, the other school They're not sharing with you, Cale?
No, Camus isn't going to kick back.
But that's another point about like.
I am not ripping on Camus.
No.
That was
And
just
nor
an
should
example.
they.
Nor should they.
No, they
should
don't have
they.
to share their gates, but that's another. When there's a district stadium and how you share gates,
Yeah.
I'm sure we could do a lot of that too.
Gosh,
That's crazy.
when there's two football games on the same night, you do share the gate.
Which is every Friday night at Mackenzie
At Mackenzie
Stadium.
it is, and,
Right.
and not as much as Kiggins anymore, but certainly there has
Right, no,
been.
and
it's like,
those were issues. Those
we-
were
Yes, so you got Fort Vancouver say, can we play when Camus
let's play when
Skyview?"
Camus and Skyview play.
Yeah.
And
So
And that
we'll share
happens.
that gate?
Yeah. So if Heritage is hosting Hudson's Bay on the same night that Union is playing Camus, and we split that gate 50-50, Heritage, the beneficiaries of that,
Right,
for sure.
Right, exactly. So, all right. Well, we just spent almost 20 minutes on this, and we didn't really get.
Well,
to,
let me
go
give
ahead,
Randy a couple numbers here, just real quick.
Okay, good.
Because
Here you go, Randy.
So I gave, I did want to. So this was my time at Columbia River, and I left there 4 school years ago. On average, we took in about 50 to 55,000 a year gates, but expenses were closer to 60, and that is including like game managers, who security for the events, and scoreboard operators depending on the sport, and then officials.
Mm-hmm.
So
And officials costs have continued to go up.
yep.
And it is by far the single largest expenditure that any high school athletic budget is hit with.
Got it.
And it's not even close.
Wow, interesting. And there's not enough officials. We've talked about that many times before.
Yes.
So, I know we could go on, but or we could move on to one more subject. But Randy had a good question. If you had a magic wand and could create the best possible system, is there a lot you would change? Or and then then he said he wrote, but are we doing it correctly in terms of allocating resources in our public educational system? So I want to answer that first. And far as are we doing it correctly? I know you guys, obviously, you literally have dogs. I mean, you get, not literally, but you're invested. This is your jobs. You're in the athletic department. Me, I'm a reporter, so yeah, I guess I'm kind of invested, but I could report on anything. If high school sports went away, I could report on other things. I just believe that extracurricular activities are so important in our schools. I know my daughter, who's not an athlete but is in drama, spends more time in drama with the drama teacher at Evergreen High School than any other teacher. And I know that athletes spend more times with their coaches at practice and things like that. And if you get the right coach or the right drama teacher or the right music teacher, that person can be the most influential person in their lives. And we love the drama teacher at Evergreen. That person has meant a lot to our daughter. And I don't want the funds to go away, and just do math, reading,
Correct.
and writing. But yeah, if there was a magic wand and you guys had it, and what would you want to fix with the athletic departments? Cale, it looks like you're thinking.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
that's a good question.
I guess this is what I would say to echo your sentiment, Paul. Our extracurriculars are the biggest at-risk program we have in our educational facilities. I mean, it is because you connect with kids on a different level, and for some kids, it's the motivation to get them to come to school, and there are academic requirements. So I mean, that it's their motivation to do the math and do the science and do the history because they want to be able to play.
You can't play football with a bunch of Fs.
Yes,
correct.
So, and I guarantee I mean, I was never a star athlete like you, Cale, or anything, but I did go.
But you made connections.
Sports was the reason I wanted to go to
Right.
high school, and sports was the reason I checked up on my own grades.
Absolutely.
Because I had to be eligible. That was my whole goal.
Yep.
As long as I'm eligible for sports, I'm good.
Yep.
And that's what I wanted to do. And so no, I don't think Randy was asking like we should defund sports. I don't think that was it at all.
No,
but I found it was just a very
that's a
interesting
good
email,
question.
and it was you gave us 20 minutes to talk about in the summer, Randy. So thank you. So can we move on? Should we move on? Or
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, cool. We're going to Husky Stadium. Woo! Go Dogs, right? Yeah, everyone loves the Dogs,
Yes.
right?
Montlake,
Yeah.
baby.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, now Husky Stadium with 72,000 seats is going to, hopefully that'll be enough to contain the Class 1B state championship football crowd.
11:30 a.m. on a Friday.
Yes.
And so anyway, the news broke a couple weeks, or about 10 days ago. I don't know when, but Washington Interscholastic Activities Association and the University of Washington are teaming up. So I don't know. It's not going to be called. Is it going to be called the Gridiron? What's it going to be called?
I don't know. I haven't seen
Nope.
any
It's
official
gonna be
name.
called. But anyway, the state championship games are
Yeah.
coming to Husky Stadium. 3 on that Friday, first weekend of December,
Yep.
and 3 on Saturday. The 3A game will be Friday night. The 4A game will be Saturday night.
Yep.
I assume. I haven't even looked at those.
No,
but
that's,
yeah,
you're
gotta
right.
be.
You're right.
And I wrote a column. I wrote a column last week on it. ClarkCountyToday.com sports. And yeah, it is for the players. It's pretty darn cool because they get to play at a Pac-12 stadium, and it's a beautiful stadium and all that stuff. I'm still and that I have been convinced that that's the most important thing for this. It's for the athletes. For fans, I'm not so sure it's a win. But we'll go into my opinion in a bit.
But now you can get out on Lake Washington and tailgate.
Yeah.
Or boat gate. What do they call
Take
it?
your yacht across.
Sailgate.
Yes.
And
See, Paul, come on.
Okay. All right. But Tony, your thoughts before we get back to mine.
I just think, we talked to Mick a little over a month ago. He'd mentioned how hard he and his staff were working, and UW wanted to do it. I didn't think it was going to happen this year, but that stadium, it only hosts 7 events basically, and I think it's good for the kids. That's how I was looking at it.
Yep. Cale?
yeah, I mean, that's really what it's about. It's about giving those kids an experience to play in a venue that very few of them, I mean, not very many of them are going to go on and play Division I football. And so to be able to participate in that venue will be very cool for them to have that experience. I do share some of your sentiment where that not knowing if that is going to be better for fans. I mean, there's going to be some challenges, right? For those of you, those of us who have driving around and trying to park at the University of Washington for events it's a challenge. Right. So that's going to create a challenge.
But Kurt, then again, they do have 72,000 a game for the Huskies.
Yes.
So take that rail network now, which I've done.
They do figure that out, but that they're only going to need 5,000 to 10,000.
Well, and they're only going to use the lower bowl, so if it's raining, you're getting wet.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's going to be some challenges along those lines, but ultimately, for the kids who get to participate in the event, it'll be much better than just showing up to a high school stadium.
So, and that was my column. I was convinced that it's best for the athletes, but I loved the games at the high schools. When Camas won it all, was it 2019? I think was that the first year that might have been the first year they did that.
It was.
They were out of the dome.
Out of the dome. Yep. First year, not in the dome. By the way, anyone who's been at the dome, watched as a fan, as a media, the dome was terrible the last couple of years after a renovation.
Yes.
So they had to move it. No, even if the costs were less, they had to move it. Some people could not see the field from sitting behind their own team's bench. It was bad. So anyway, but I loved how packed it was in this small high school stadium, and it was standing room only. And people complained about that. Fans did sometimes complain about that. But it was an atmosphere. And when there was a roar, it felt like a roar. And I don't even remember how I wrote it, but I think the roar of 7,000 people in a 70,000 seat stadium is going to be silenced by a bunch of, by 65,000 seats, empty seats. There's just no atmosphere. And by the way, I was in a very large stadium this weekend for a USFL game in Canton, Ohio, and there was me and 600 or 700 of my closest friends watching this game. And if I wanted to, I could have yelled some horrible stuff, and the Fox cameras would have picked it up.
Sure.
It could have listened. It could have hurt anybody. But anyway, my point is that no one's going to do horrible things at the Husky Stadium. But I don't know. I'm happy for the athletes. I'm not so sure I would love it if I was just a fan of the game going, man, there's 5,000 people here and 65,000 empty seats.
Yeah, but the other positive is for just the average fan who's not necessarily affiliated with any of the teams that are playing, you can now go watch all the games where you couldn't do that when they moved out of the Tacoma Dome.
Yeah, I think it's I'd have to give the whole move itself an A or A minus for me, because I'm an old fart who thinks who likes smaller venues for smaller crowds. I don't like huge venues for small crowds. But no, the rest of it is, you're going to get to watch all the games if you wanted to. Heck, if we had I don't know exactly the schedule, but if we had a 1A team playing on Friday and a 4A team playing on Saturday, and I'd actually go there and I would watch all 6 games, because I'd be up there and I would be in heaven. It's football heaven. So I'm a man who just, went 2,500 miles to go watch a USFL game. Well, that was not the reason I went on my travels. It is.
You wanted live football in your life. Yes, it is.
So anyway, but also, they call it a 1-year trial basis, but I'm gonna just assume that if it goes well, they'll just keep doing it. I mean, right?
Yeah, I would think so.
There's no other.
I would think so.
That's the other thing. There's no other facility that could.
Well, unless the Seahawks want to open it up, but we were told that.
Yeah,
that's even more.
The prices
expensive.
were
that's more expensive.
Yeah.
Same problem, but I'm talking about, is there a smaller college stadium, but in a location where the WIAA wouldn't mind it?
You don't want to send everybody to Pullman.
What about PLU or UPS? You've played there.
Not
big enough.
They're not big enough.
Right.
Because I don't think I've never been to a game.
No,
I don't know how big Central Washington is, but nobody wants
not big enough there either.
And then hotels
Eastern,
and people coming in. It's just weird. Yeah.
Eastern. To be honest with you, I don't think Eastern's even big enough.
Right.
Because if you're gonna host all those games, I mean, you've got to be able to have the capacity to turn them over too, right? Because some people aren't going to stay for all the games.
Right. By the way, I love what it's 3 hours in between games, or 3 or 3.5 hours.
Yeah, there was enough. There was a good chunk of time.
What I also love about that, again, for the athletes, I didn't even write this. They'll have time to celebrate on the field.
Yeah.
Hawkinson a couple of years ago, they got kicked off the field because
I remember
the next game was warming up, and so they're all trying to celebrate with their fans, and it was like a mad, it's like it's like New York City rush hour on the subway, trying to talk to people and stuff. It was crazy, but now they'll get to celebrate and get the trophy presentation. Well, I think they had the trophy presentation on the field, but as soon as that's
done,
they were just kicked off.
You got to get off because the next team's got to get on and warm up.
So now there might be a little time to actually give some hugs and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's a good thing. Congratulations on WIAA. That was a good thing. All right. So now, hey, speaking of my vacation, I went to Cleveland. I flew to Cleveland, and that's about, 40 minutes north or 30 minutes north of Canton, Ohio. The whole reason for me to go to Cleveland this weekend is I wanted to go to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So I've got a nephew, but he's a grown nephew. He's in his 30s. I'm an old guy. But we're huge Raider fans. We're huge NFL fans. And we've been trying to get to the Hall of Fame together. We didn't want to go without. We just wanted to make it together for years. Many years ago, when Tim Brown was being inducted to the Hall of Fame for the Raiders, that was going to be our year to go to the Hall of Fame. Well, he was in the Army in the time, flying helicopters, and he was stationed in Afghanistan. So
there you go.
That wasn't happening.
They wouldn't let him fly for the weekend. It was crazy.
Come on.
I know.
Priorities,
right? If I was still in the Army, I could have made that happen. But so anyway, and just everything got in the way. Well, anyway, he just got transferred from his work. He now lives in Cleveland, and then part of his work or whatever, once a week he drives past Canton, Ohio.
Oh, really?
And he said, Paul, I'm not waiting much longer. You better get down here. So
that's cool.
My wife said, just go for the weekend.
Neat.
So we got there Saturday. Went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Went to a Cleveland Major League Baseball game, Guardians. Do you remember what their names are?
Yep.
Houston beat them, and but it was a nice crowd and a fireworks show. That was just all little bonus stuff. But then Sunday, I spent 6.5 hours in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Very cool.
And if you've ever been there, most people won't spend 6 hours there, but I had to read everything. It was my only time going to be there, so I had to go there. They still had Cliff Branch's display because he was inducted last year. Mm-hmm. But it was interesting. I don't know how they do it. Well, in baseball, I think they have a plaque for every player and gives their little highlights, right? And we're going to talk about your experience there. In football, those busts, it's a beautiful room. But all the busts say, I took a picture of Steve Largent for you guys, just says Steve Largent and then the teams he played for in the years he played. That's all it says. You have to go to like this interactive computer on the side to go look up all the Seahawks or look up all the Raiders and get all their bio. They're basically their plaque information, which was cool because you got to see a lot of highlights of the guys that did. But in the actual bus, there's no what did they do to get here? It's
No
just their
biography or
name.
anything.
Nothing. It's just their name and the teams. I found that interesting. But I went and saw every Raider, and I saw a few others. Just took some pictures of people who are loved by friends of mine, so I could give them pictures. But man, it was so awesome. The history of football, and I just loved it all. And but before we get back to the rest of my trip, because these guys also teased me via text all night as I went to, I kept my football thing going. Yeah, but Tony, you've been to the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Baseball Hall of Fame
three times,
three
right?
induction weekends.
Wow.
And it was great each time. Just the first time we decided to go was Ripken and Gwynn went in together, and at that point, that was the biggest crowd they'd ever had for induction weekend. Didn't stay for the induction for that one. But just to be able to go in and do all that, and then went in 2016 for Griffey. And at that point, I'd become a Hall of Fame member since going with Ripken and Gwynn, and they actually have some pretty good VIP things for induction weekends. So I kept that, and paid a little bit extra to get on the grass for the induction.
Okay.
So John Sukanik and I sat through, and it was the hottest I've ever been in my life. That's another story.
But you were close enough. You might have been on TV. Did you guys ever look to see
they panned the crowd. I think they did a couple of headshots. Yeah, but that was fun. And then went back for Edgar in 2019.
Talk about quite possibly one of the worst Hall of Fame induction speeches. Griff, he struggled, man. He struggled.
He did a little bit, yes.
Was it because of the heat or just?
I'll be honest. At that point, I was ready to pass out. So I'm sure I've never been so hot in my life, and it was still kind of morning.
Yeah.
But the sun was like right in my face. I don't know.
Yeah. And so Cooperstown. Oh, it's funny. I've been to Cooperstown too. When I was in the Army at Fort Drum, New York. It's a long drive, but I drove down for the weekend and did a story for the Fort Drum newspaper. Hey, this is within driving distance if you want to go see the Hall of Fame. So
basically, I look at it like this: if it's as if Kalama hosted the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Yes, it's that small.
It is that small, and it's just unbelievable that what they can do that weekend.
Because
you have to
30 to 40,000 people there, right?
Oh well, Ripken and Gwynn was close to 55.
Wow.
Visitors.
And I'm telling you, Tony, you can back me up on this. You cannot fathom it until you've been there, until you've seen Cooperstown and you go, this is where the Hall of Fame is.
Right, and you wonder, like, wait a minute, why? But, and so I've never been there on an off weekend.
Right.
But what we decided to do for Edgar is get there early on Friday. And there was nobody there. Mm-hmm. But they still had all the... there was a ton of baseball old timers will come in, and so Lou Piniella was there early, and it was just like we sat down at a table with Lou Piniella like this, right, and just a couple other things for both the Mariners going in. Edgar and Griffey, like the broadcasters were there, and it's like, hey, it's Rick Riz.
Yeah.
Right. And it's Maryland Niehaus. I mean, just, I'm a Mariner geek, and that's huge to see that. Right. Yeah. But then you go the Hall of Fame, just history, and you walk into the Hall of Plaques. Mm-hmm. And again, if you have the VIP membership, you can get in a little bit early, stay a little bit later, and do all that stuff. It's awesome.
I will say it's just amazing.
But induction Sunday.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to describe it.
Right. And for me, it's weird. I mean, I would have gone to when Tim Brown or Charles Woodson, if the schedules were worked out. But I didn't really want to go to the Hall of Fame on one of those weekends because I wanted to be able to move around. So I'm so glad I went this weekend. I was able to see everything in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Cale, you're in a Hall of Fame. Let's talk about that.
Well, yes, the PLU Athletic Hall of Fame, the entire 1993 national championship team that I was on is.
You got the natty,
is in that.
By the way,
come on, that's the 30th anniversary.
If this was
this year.
a video podcast, you all would have seen him rolling his eyes at me as I try to compare PLU Hall of Fame with the Pro Football and the Pro Baseball Hall of Fame. But hey, I didn't want you to feel left out.
Hey, I appreciate it.
He says he's never been to a Hall of Fame, but he's in a Hall of Fame. I think that's more important.
Yes.
So anyway,
it's awesome.
Cale. Oh gosh. So back to my weekend. Then I also I'm also, as you know, a reporter for Clark County Today. I wanted to do a story, a Where Are They Now story. There is a Vancouver athlete in the USFL, and believe it or not, the USFL plays in Canton, Ohio. That stadium, the stadium that is used for the Hall of Fame game in the NFL, is also used for high school in the area. But the USFL uses it this year as home base for two of the teams. I think the Pittsburgh Maulers and the New Jersey Generals. And that's their home stadium. And even though they say Philadelphia and New Jersey on it, but they don't play there. And so anyway, Sunday night, the New Jersey Generals were hosting the Philadelphia Stars. Jordan Sewell of Fort Vancouver High School is on the roster. Now, unfortunately, he got injured a few weeks back, and it's whatever the injury is, it's enough that he's been put on injured reserve. And when you're on injured reserve in pro football, you don't usually travel with the team. So he was not there. But I've reached out to the USFL, and I'm hoping to interview Jordan either this week or next week and just kind of get a Where Are They Now. Last year, he had 2 or 3 touchdowns in the championship game at the USFL. The guy can play. And so it's going to be fun to talk to him again after all these years. But anyway, these guys, Tony and Cale, are texting me. I don't know if it was mostly Cale, just ripping on me for going to a USFL game. Well, one, I traveled to Canton, Ohio. I was there all day. And now to finish my day at the Hall of Fame, I'm going to go to a football game. I don't care if it's the USFL or not. And I was a season ticket holder in the, I think, 7th or 8th grade when the Portland Breakers were here. So Buford Jordan was the running back, and he was awesome. So
Marcus Dupree was the first big one.
Before he blew his knee out.
He never played a game in Portland. Marcus Dupree.
He didn't?
Blew his knee out in week 1. It was a road game. He never played a game in Portland.
I would never have thought that.
And so,
because there's a 30 for 30 on him.
Oh yeah, it's great.
It is a good one.
But there's not much on the US just because there's just not, he didn't have much on the US. But no, I went to every home game of the Portland Breakers. There were 9 home games. We beat Steve Young. We stopped him at like the 2 or 3 yard line. I think Jim Kelly beat us. We went 6-3 at home. The Portland Breakers went 6-3 at home and 0-9 on the road that year.
There you go.
So, but with Valencia in attendance, they were a winning football team.
If they'd only known.
So anyway, it's fun because they're still using the same logos.
Yeah.
Yes, those logos are. Hey, I don't care what you say about the league or whatever. Those logos are fire. They're great. I don't know. Am I supposed to say fire? Is that?
I understood what you meant.
That's
but
how all the kids talk.
All of our kid listeners are turning off now.
My teenagers just rolled their eyes without even knowing what I said. But anyway, those logos are awesome.
Yes.
And then you guys are gonna love this story. So I might have told you this in the text, but. So this is also Prince Celebration Weekend this past weekend in Minneapolis and at Paisley Park. It's because it's his birthday week, so they have a celebration every year, and thousands of people show up to Minnesota. Well, I wasn't in Minnesota, but it's still a Prince weekend throughout the whole country for anybody who's a Purple believer. And so in the first half, they ran a little contest of. Scan the thing and you vote. What song do you want to hear? Because it was 80s night at this USFL game.
Oh, coincidentally.
Also, there's like 800 or 900 people there. It poured all day in Canton, so the locals didn't show up. And hardly anyone showed up to this game. So it was just me and a few guys. But anyway, they voted for, there was a Phil Collins song, a Prince song, and somebody else. And they voted for Phil Collins. And I stood up, and I'm just yelling at everyone.
You are, aren't you?
I'm yelling at everyone. I'm never coming to Ohio again. This is outrageous. On this weekend, you guys voted for Phil Collins. I love Phil, but this is outrageous. And I'm yelling, and I'm having a blast because there's only about 100 or 200 people on my sideline here because we were on the visiting sideline rooting for the Philadelphia Stars. And so everyone was laughing at me. The halftime show, without announcing anything, it was just on the big screen. Prince shows up on the big screen. The entire performance of Purple Rain from the movie.
Yep.
And it was so flippin' cool. So David Jr. tweets the USFL. Valencia was about to leave the game, and he was never coming back to you guys. He was going to unfollow you if you guys didn't play Prince. And now, boom.
There you go.
So anyway, I got my wonderful Prince moment to cap this incredible dream of mine to go to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and then a USFL game in the middle was very exciting. I don't really care who won, but we got into it, and it's a hell of a weekend, and that's why we're sports fans. I mean,
Yep.
Yeah.
you go to Mariner games, you go to
Yep.
Mariner games, you go to Seahawks games
yeah.
when you can. And
I'll go to a Raiders game
you'll go to-
again sometime in my
someday.
life.
Blazer games
Maybe
all
this
the time.
year you
Yes.
have a connection. Yeah.
Yeah.
Blazer games, all this stuff. I mean, it's okay. I was in the Denver airport when Denver won the
the
championship.
Nuggets.
When the Nuggets won the championship on Monday.
Was
night.
there a lot of yelling?
Oh yes, there was a lot of
Okay.
yelling.
All right.
Lot of yelling. So it was pretty cool.
That's their first one.
Yep.
It is, and you saw fans crying.
Wow.
And I love that because I know.
Listen, I'm not getting out of bed for 3 days if the Mariners win a World Series. I'll be in the fetal position.
I will. Yeah, I know how. I don't cry when the Raiders lose. I don't like shed a tear if the Raiders lose. I might be mad or angry for a bit or question it for the rest of the offseason, but I don't cry about it. But I admit I've cried tears of joy sometimes on some happy moments.
Hey, just a football odyssey. I have seen a CFL game.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think I was 13 or 14. Went with some friends of the family who his stepdad family lived in Winnipeg.
Okay.
And so we went there for a couple weeks.
Blue Bombers?
The Blue Bombers played
Yeah.
the BC Lions.
Okay.
And that was one of the day trip things we did. That was cool.
Absolutely. Hey, it's pro football. It's pro football. And again, at these USFL game, because we could talk to the players on the sideline. That's
bizarre.
Because and you could hear them. Some of them were swearing and getting all fired up because
yeah.
Philadelphia's getting killed in this game, and one of their wide receivers was just all fired up and ticked off, and then he made this great play for a touchdown, and Philadelphia made a game out of it. But anyway,
So
it was
just to confirm, they kept all the same mascots and logos
They
from
did.
the 80s.
They did.
I didn't
They did.
realize that.
So
Yep.
there's only 8. I think there's only. I don't.
But
even,
Birmingham still has a team, right?
I don't know if Birmingham. Yes, the Stallions.
Stallions.
Yeah. Yes, I think they
Because
are in the league. Yes.
I just remember them winning a couple of titles. I don't remember. Was Jim Kelly on that team?
No, Jim Kelly was on the Houston Gamblers. And
Yeah.
Houston Gamblers
Okay.
played in Portland.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
The Michigan team was really the Michigan Panthers.
Michigan Panthers, and then they merged with the Oakland
they had
Invaders. Remember the Oakland
Invaders.
Invaders?
Yes.
They had a great logo.
They did.
Well, I was out the Chicago Blitz. I thought that was
cool.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was fun, and they kept showing all of the logos during 80s night from the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's only 8. I think there's only 8 teams now, but the USFL might have had over their 3-year history 15, 16, or 17 teams or cities.
Yeah.
Like the Portland Breakers. It started New Orleans Breakers. No, it started
Boston
Boston,
Breakers,
then
New
New
Orleans,
Orleans, and
then
then
Portland.
Portland,
And
we had good
disbanded.
attendance. Yeah, and then
Well,
but it
Man,
would
that old Civic Stadium for football.
it
My
was
It
gosh.
was awful. But
That's where Portland State played when I was going there. And Portland State was good.
Yeah, but they had good attendance because Portland was starved for
Yeah,
for
they
things
did.
like
Oh,
that.
yeah.
And
well,
so-
But sitting over the flavor pack wall. Come on.
and at that time the Oregon and Oregon State weren't any good.
No,
right?
no.
So
That was the year of the 3-3 Civil War game tie. Remember
at,
that?
at Civic Stadium.
Yes.
something like that. So yeah, it's crazy.
That's good stuff.
So anyway, it was if you, as a sports fan, I highly recommend you guys go into whatever your favorite sports Hall of Fame. It's a blast. You could be there an hour or 2 and be fine, or you could be like me. I was there for 6 hours reading everything, and I just had a blast.
That's cool.
Yep.
So, but I think that's it for. Look at that. We got like 47, 48 minutes into this, and we're so afraid we went and have programming in the summer. So thanks, Randy, for your
Keep
email.
the questions coming, Randy.
And, we'll keep this going throughout the summer, and we'll figure out better things ahead, bigger and better things. Say goodbye, Tony. Say goodbye, Cale.
See you guys. Thanks.
Goodbye, Tony.
Go
Goodbye,
M's.
Cale.
All right, take care, everybody.